I'm looking at a lot about what's going on, say, in New York and California. It's not just that our economy is being gutted, our manufacturing is being sent over to China. We don't even make our own medicine anymore. That was the craziest thing when we had a pandemic hit, and we're like, we need medicine quick. Call China because we don't have any factories that can actually make it.
The coronavirus really made a lot of people become aware of the situation. Like when medical supplies, even things like kettlebells, you couldn't get it because everything was made in China.
I mean, right now, it's really hard it's still hard to get a lot of specific equipment, professional equipment, bicycles. It's all made in China.
It's interesting on the medical side. Like, we actually do a lot of pharmaceuticals, but a lot of the raw ingredients. Mm-hmm. So the things that go into the drugs come from China, and there's nowhere else that you can get them. And
the craziest thing too is rare earth minerals, right? Which we use for, I guess, smartphones, among other things. We get it almost exclusively from China, right? That's my understanding.
Japan did recently find like a big supply,
but it's everywhere. It's actually not uncommon to find.
There are rare earth minerals in the U.S.
Yeah. But we just go for it, China. We're just gonna give all of our money and keep printing it. Now we've got 35% of all U.S. dollars just being printed like crazy.
Can't wait to get some.
We've got New York, California, Michigan. These states have violated the Constitution beyond any record. Like, I mean, listen, if you come out and you say, we need to have an argument about gun control, I understand the Second Amendment, but you can still have a right to keep and bear arms with some restrictions. There's an argument, and people actually argue it. Although many people are now becoming rather too absolutist because of the riots and the craziness. But you look at New York, Andrew Cuomo is like, if you're protesting, you're okay. You have your rights. If you are pro Joe Biden, please come out, dance in the street, and drink champagne together. But if you want to go to a church, never going to happen. If you want to run your business because you're running out of money and you need to feed your family, no dice. This is extreme degrees of authoritarian, despotic. I don't even know. Is there a word more harsh than I can get? Psychopathic malevolence. Where he's basically sent, he had NYPD going to Jewish schools with children, and the cops would point their phones inside the windows to film them to prosecute. NYPD police officers went undercover to a restaurant, ordered food, and then as soon as the person delivered it, arrested them. That's the level of depravity coming from the likes of Cuomo. And no one in this country is doing anything, and the police officers support it. So, to make sure I'm not trying to get off on a tangent outside of the China stuff, when we hear that there's Chinese authoritarian communism and things like this, the American people seem to just roll over and take it for the most part in these blue cities. But I'll tell you, I don't see the political willpower from Trump supporters or anyone who could do anything to stop it at this point. They're going to completely destroy the economy, and they already have. The federal debt to GDP ratio is now at 128.6%. We're dropping and collapsing so quickly that when many people talk about Thucydides' trap, and are you familiar with Thucydides' trap? Mm-hmm. I talked about it quite a bit several months ago, that there's been fear for years that we will eventually get into a full-scale war, a hot war with China, because they're a rising economic power. Well, I guess there's one way to avoid it. Have our own politicians destroy this country from the inside out, and then there won't need to be a war.
I think we did this episode pretty early on, the coronavirus, called "The Cure for Coronavirus is Not Authoritarianism," and it was based on the idea that the Chinese Communist Party was trying to use their model of controlling the coronavirus, which is locking people in their homes,
literally welding them into their
welding
homes.
People in their homes, dragging people out of their homes to put them in quarantine, arresting people, beating people up for being on the streets when there was a lockdown, and kind of providing that as a model for other countries as to this is the way to deal with
and you did
the
see
coronavirus.
Western media somewhere hey, it might be a little authoritarian, but it's working.
Yeah, they got rid of it, so it kind of works. So I think in a way, the things that you're talking about in New York, or the excessive things that they're doing in California and the different places, it was almost it happened in China that they did this lockdown, then it happened in Italy that they did the lockdown. It kind of gave permission in a way for all of these people, politicians in different areas to be this is the way to deal with it.
Because
it was
China,
modeled off of it.
Yeah.
And because China lies about the actual coronavirus numbers, it seems effective. But the numbers in China are completely fake. It's obvious if you look at it.
Yeah, I really wanted to ask you this, but it's kind of strange that these kind of top Democrats, even the New York City mayor today, Bill de Blasio, came out and just plainly said, I'd like to say very bluntly, our mission is to redistribute wealth. So it's very interesting seeing these Democrats kind of mimic the language and some of the behaviors of the communist Chinese. But from your sources, from the people you talk to on the ground, what's really going on there? Did they defeat the coronavirus? Because we're seeing a lot of photos of them raving and partying and having these huge
The
pool
marathon,
parties.
the street marathon.
Yes.
they did.
How do you guys make sense of this story of this deadly pandemic everywhere, but China's having street parties and raves at the same time? Did their lockdowns work? Like what's going on here?
Well, first of all, I know you have some specific things you want to say about that, Shelley, but like over the past couple of months, you keep seeing like certain cities in China declaring wartime measures to fight the coronavirus because there's some rumor that maybe like somebody got a case, and then suddenly they need to test 70,000 people in a city, and they can do that in like 3 days because it's a horrible authoritarian regime. But so you get the sense that it never did stop. There is still something happening, the extent of which we can't know. And I know you have some specific things you were talking about earlier.
Oh yeah, just the idea that, well, I mean, in terms of the numbers, there's no way to, like, you cannot,
We'll
there's no way
never
to
know.
even guess because
Yeah.
it's not really going to be based in reality because
Like their GDP numbers.
the GDP numbers aren't real. There was, China's been forced organ harvesting from dissidents. And, it turns out that like some people did a study and found out that like since 2015, they've claimed that they only have organs coming from, voluntary donations,
Sure.
Sure.
I got a couple kidneys I don't need.
Yeah, and then these researchers found out that their voluntary donation numbers and their transplant numbers were all fake. They all mimicked a quadratic equation,
Perfectly.
Really?
almost perfectly.
So are they actually harvesting organs?
They are.
From political prisoners.
Yes, they are doing.
Uyghurs,
Yeah,
Falun Gong.
They're definitely doing organ transplants. Their official numbers are fake.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise! Isn't their real estate all fake too?
Yeah. Yeah.
I watched. I was watching a video someone posted on Facebook. I can't remember what it was, but maybe you guys know, where a guy was explaining the warfare strategy of China is exploiting the weaknesses of a nation that they accept. So if you allow free speech, then we'll support protests against you. If racism is a very sensitive issue, then we'll inflame it and we'll just keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. And that what we're seeing right now is actually the fifth generational war full scale with China. They know that if they actually, crashed some U-boats on the shores of California and ran in full speed, they might have a very large ground army, but the people would fight back and the Americans would win. Air superiority for one thing, plus all the aircraft carriers we got. So what they're doing is subversion, manipulating our systems, stock market, buying land, control. They're coming in, they're undermining all of our institutions. It's working, and it's collapsing underneath us. And I wonder when we hear things like that from Bill de Blasio, these people like I look at the Chinese Communist Party. I think they're very smart, very, very, very smart. They understand why they had to have some kind of capitalistic system in their country to actually allow it to expand economically. Because, the things they were doing very early on kind of didn't work. Like, didn't they kill all these birds at one point or something?
The sparrows.
Yeah.
Right. That was didn't do anything, did it? Like,
They had
no.
kids literally pulling grass out of the ground because grass was bourgeoisie.
So,
Wow.
clearly that stuff didn't work. But now you have people like Bill de Blasio, who clearly is not a smart person, saying, we're going to do this, redistribute wealth. So it seems like they've bought and paid for as many elites as they can. You've got the 1,000 Talents Project program or whatever out of these universities where these people are essentially spies. It's really amazing. They're not getting charged with treason. And then
The way they've gotten a hold of universities is horrifying. We could talk
and
about
is
that later if you want.
is it a coincidence then that the universities are the epicenter for the most part of this woke, broken theory, critical theory that
I've
makes
never
no
heard
sense?
about what you're talking about and had no knowledge.
None
of this.
whatsoever.
No. No.
So no.
No. Never.
Never.
We're playing it safe, right, Shelley?
Super safe, apparently.
Well, I think that in a way, like, the Chinese Communist Party is happy to see us destroy ourselves, but they don't really care if we follow communism as an ideology. That's not really what they care about. What they care about is having the U.S. become weakened, and so they can continue to, oppress all these other countries and
Specifically, their growing influence in Asia Pacific.
Yeah, definitely. So
the reason I bring this up is we had a story in the New York Times. It was updated a couple days ago, but it was from about a week or so ago, where a university professor said we should not give the vaccine to the elderly because they tend to be more white, and we need to level the playing field with minorities, which is one of the craziest things I've ever seen written in the New York Times, where they outright said this professor believes older white people should die to balance the number of people.
Harvard professor?
No, University of Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
But at the
my
same
alma mater.
at the same time, from the College Fix, we have a story about Cornell, which is mandating only the white students get the vaccine. So the critical race theory stuff is completely nonsensical. It just makes literally no sense to be like, well, it's racist to give the vaccine to the to the white people, so we're going to give it to the minorities. But at the same time, only the white people should be forced to get it. It's like that theory makes none of that makes sense, right? This ideology clearly has no end point, no goal, no success. It's just chaos. And so when you see this coming out of universities, you see things like the 1,000 Talents program. I don't want to get too conspiratorial, but I think when you're talking about China trying to subvert this country, and they have a program in which they buy out university professors, and then you have many university professors who are espousing nonsensical ideas that will only destroy this country, I kind of feel like there's some lines to be connected there. Maybe I'm wrong.
The 1,000 Talents is mostly about science and tech stuff, because what they really want to do with that is steal U.S. technology and bring it to China. Literally, paying professors to bring their research.
Not to say that specifically they're using 1,000 Talents to espouse this kind of weird, far left or critical race theory stuff. Just that I think if they're willing to do that in universities, would they not be willing to push this other kind of ideology because it eats us alive from the inside?
I do think that the critical race theory is interesting in the sense that the Chinese Communist Party is like what you said about the video, where they'll use our weaknesses against us, or they'll use our strengths against us and make them weaknesses. So with the racism thing, that's one of the things that they've definitely been using.
Especially in Australia.
Well, in Australia, but also here, when people started blaming China for the coronavirus, that was definitely racist. It's racist to talk about how it started in Wuhan.
Asians are white.
Yeah.
That's the new
That's
thing.
right, yeah.
I was very happy to tell Shelley.
Yeah, I was very disappointed to learn.
I was really excited because it turns out that I'm double white.
Right.
Yeah, so I get to be white twice.
So is that is that more power? You have super
I don't know.
privilege. Yeah.
Does this mean
super privilege?
Does that mean you are or aren't going to get the vaccine?
Well, for my allergies, I'm not.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, I actually do have allergies.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
All right,
legit allergies.
back to our topic. I think you guys were
Hey,
talking...
quiet down. We're talking about something interesting. Allergies. Tell me more.
Yes.
I think you guys were talking about the larger divide and conquer agenda, and it is interesting to see a lot of special interests from China do give a lot of money to the universities, and it is kind of exemplified, as we saw with, again, I'm going to bring this back to Mayor Bill de Blasio, because his administration, during the early onset of the coronavirus, was saying, it's fine. Don't be racist. Come out to the Chinese Day Parade. Everything's going to be fine. Don't worry.
Don't be racist.
And then next week, he's literally threatening martial law, where even Andrew Cuomo had to stop Bill de Blasio and said, wait, hold on there. You're pushing it too far. If you're going farther than Andrew Cuomo wants you to go, you know you're a lunatic and you absolutely lost it. And he has been a part of this larger divide and conquer, supporting Black Lives Matter protests, openly calling for demonstrations, meanwhile telling you can't have dinner with your family because it's going to spread the coronavirus and kill everyone. And this Black Lives Matter thing also, we have to admit here, is being exploited by the Chinese, as there have been many Chinese diplomats that have come out and said the United States is racist. Look at we support Black Lives Matter. There was even a police officer in Hong Kong that was screaming at American journalists there, Black Lives Matter, as he was beating the crap out of the dissidents in Hong Kong. So we have to understand there is an element of this exploitation of our racial divide by the Chinese. Whether it's being weaponized or just exploited, I think is something, a topic of debate that I think we should talk about.
I think it's their favorite thing to bring up in the racism, because it's like that's the number one thing that they can, like, anything they can hit us with.
They know it hits a nerve.
Yeah,
in the
and
US.
it hits a nerve in the U.S. and also like it's everything they do is whataboutism in a certain sense, where like if you try to bring up human rights atrocities in China, the first thing they'll do is bring up racism or whatever.
Steve Kerr did this.
Oh,
Remember the NBA guy? Mm-hmm. He was like, I don't go around asking about our police brutality problems, and we got issues we got to deal with. It's like, bro, you want to talk about police brutality? We can. You want to talk about concentration camps? We have to.
Didn't that happen with was it Mark Cuban? Somebody who?
Oh yeah, who was like,
man.
that was also terrible because he was like, China is a customer.
Yeah,
but we should. I treat China as a customer, but we should start in our own, like, clean up our own house. Yeah,
well, that's a fundamental problem. They talk about China like it's our customer instead of the Chinese Communist Party has concentration camps and harvests the organs of people who have wrong political beliefs.
I think that's one thing. Like, Joe Biden came out with a statement during International Human Rights Day, which was the 10th, and what was disappointing was that he kind of he was like, yes, there are many human rights atrocities around the world, but then was like, we have to talk about systemic injustices here in America and whatever. And that's fair, but it's kind of like, it is very similar to Chinese propaganda in the sense that they're always talking about, like, well, before you can talk about what's wrong in other countries, you have to clean. If you're not perfect, you cannot talk about anything else.
Jordan Peterson says, clean your room, bucko.
You can't compare
the two. Are you saying Jordan
two.
Peterson's a communist?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's what I'm getting here.
I'm saying he's secretly subverting American. I'm kidding.
Yeah, I mean, you can't compare the two. It's not apples and oranges when you compare Black Lives Matter to the Uyghurs, especially when you look at the kind of xenophobia and the treatment of blacks in China. And there was amazing, incredible video that came out that was awe-stunning, showing what was happening with the Chinese government literally blaming black people for the coronavirus inside of China,
evicting
kicking
them
them out of their own homes, kicking them out into the street. And then this is the country lecturing us about Black Lives Matter?
They made a commercial where there's a black man put into a washing machine. And you guys, I'm sure you saw this. And it created an uproar in the U.S. because so for those that haven't seen the commercial, there's a Chinese woman and a black man. She pushes the black man in the washing machine and he comes out Chinese. And there was outrage in the U.S. and China's response was, they're like, you Americans, you baitsua, you crazies, you're so sensitive, grow up. They didn't care.
There was
also
also
never
the
do.
Blackface.
Yeah, the CCTV. You can go ahead.
Yeah, but every year they have this communist gala New Year's show, and I think it was last year they had like somebody dressing up in blackface. The Africa, China,
like China in Africa,
partnership.
and how they're like helping all the African people, and they had like an actress in blackface.
And as so many of the experts from Africa we've talked to are saying, like, this is colonialism, this is neo-colonialism.
So I remember spending time in Africa doing reporting, and I was surprised how many Chinese nationals were at the airport, at the hotels,
and they're building a Chinese surveillance state in those countries.
Yes. Most importantly, I mean, I was in Kenya and Zimbabwe and Somalia. And even in Somalia, I saw some Chinese nationals, which was pretty surprising to say the least. But talking to almost every African, a lot of them brought up to me, the Chinese are here. They're taking over. They are the new colonizers. This is crazy what's happening here. And I was shocked to the level of how many Africans were talking to me about this seriously, whether it was taxi drivers, whether it was waiters, whether it was random people that I walked into or was interviewing. They're like, you should really take a look into China and how they're essentially taking over all of Africa and usurping all of our natural resources and buying off our politicians. And it was surprising because I didn't know about it until I was in Africa and actually saw it on the ground there.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. We do the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., so come back to check us out when we go live. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, and we are also available on all podcast platforms for free if you want to listen to us there. Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you all next time.